For a record 6 years now, Squarespace has been helping me turn my dream into reality. And that's what Squarespace does for millions of other people too. Their industry-leading website creation tools help millions of people start new careers, build new businesses, or just get things done. They're offering a special discount to viewers of this channel, so stick around to the end of the video to learn more. Hello! Firstly, please forgive the lateness of this video. The Switch 2 is almost old news at this point, but I had to schlep all the way to New York to go hands-on with it, and then I had to schlep all the way to Bungie in Seattle to go hands-on with Marathon. More on that soon. And then I had to schlep all the way home, and since Australia is like a 65-hour plane ride from anywhere, production timeline got a little thrown out. You know what? It's kind of a good thing that this video is so delayed, because boy oh boy have we learned a lot about the Switch 2 since that initial reveal. At the end of the direct, we were like, hell yeah, man, Nintendo has done it again, baby. I'm pre-ordering tomorrow. But then we saw the price of the unit and we were like, okay. Then we saw the price of the games and we were like, then we saw that some of the physical games you buy don't even come with the data on the cartridge. After that, a bunch of people were just like, I'm just gonna hold off on the whole pre-order thing for now. And then the tariffs came in, and so people in the United States couldn't even pre-order if they wanted to. While all of that news was breaking, I was going hands-on with the Switch 2 at a special media event in New York City. I was invited by Nintendo. They graciously offered to pay for my flights and accommodation, but I declined that offer, choosing instead to pay my own costs so that you can be guaranteed truly independent coverage, unswayed by the glitz and glamour of an all-expenses-paid trip to the Big Apple. The event was held on Fifth Avenue, and a day later, that location was filled with protesters pissed off that they could no longer pre-order a Switch 2. The day before, though, I was playing Mario Kart, Donkey Kong, Metroid 4, Cyberpunk, Yakuza 0, Civilization 7, Tears of the Kingdom Switch 2 edition, and I even played that little tech demo thing that Nintendo announced, and now having played it, I can confirm that yes, Nintendo is absolutely fucking insane thinking that they could charge for that. Like, yes, absolutely batshit insane. To cap all of that off, I put out a community post asking for your top Nintendo Switch 2 questions so that I could answer them in this video. And so that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna cover all the major reveals from the Direct. I'm gonna give you my hands-on impressions for the device itself, as well as all the games I played. And as I do all of that, I'm gonna try and answer as many of your questions as I can. So with all that said, let's get to it. So last week, Nintendo aired their long awaited Switch 2 reveal, and I gotta say, it was a pretty strong showing. On the hardware side, Nintendo confirmed a bunch of things that make the Switch 2 a very impressive upgrade over the original, and arguably one of the best handhelds on the market, and maybe even just the best depending on how you slice it. This thing is sporting a 7.9-inch screen. The display is LCD, but it's 1080p and 120 Hz with variable refresh rate and HDR. That is an extremely good screen for a handheld. Now, that brings us to our first question, the OLED thing, okay? Carbon Fiber Carpet asks, how does the screen feel compared to the original Switch LCD screen and OLED? Will it feel like a downgrade from the OLED? Yeah, so when the Direct confirmed that the Switch 2 has an LCD screen, I let out like an audible groan because OLED is just better. That's a fact. And that's been proved out in like every product category, including the Steam Deck and the original Switch. Having gone hands-on with it myself, I am not going to tell you that this is better than OLED or even necessarily as good as an OLED, but I will tell you that it is an extremely impressive LCD screen, to the point where I wasn't really lamenting the fact that it wasn't an OLED. I wasn't looking at this thing and thinking, oh, this is really nice, but it would be much better if it was an OLED. I was just kind of looking at it thinking, shit, this is a really fucking good LCD screen. I don't exactly know what the panel manufacturer has done to deliver this result, but I will say it is extremely impressive, and I think most people will be pretty stunned at how bright this screen is compared to other LCD panels. But that 120 Hz variable refresh rate panel is a very big deal that is going to make less demanding games look buttery smooth on this thing, and it's also going to give developers some headroom to set custom frame rates outside of the regular 30 or 60 FPS breakpoints. Hell, this thing even has NVIDIA G-Sync, which we only learned about after the Direct aired, and that is technology that even further increases smoothness and responsiveness and reduces screen tearing. So TLDR on the screen, it's not OLED, but it's still an extremely impressive LCD screen, and I was genuinely blown away by the brightness, the clarity, and the smoothness, so it's definitely not just marketing speak. Then we get to the performance when docked. This thing can do 4K 60 FPS docked. The Switch 1 was capped at 1080p, so you might have expected them to make the jump to 1440p for the next iteration, but nope, straight to 4K. I actually got to play the Switch 2 edition of Tears of the Kingdom in both handheld and docked, And I can't confirm what resolution or frame rate it was running at because Nintendo wouldn't tell me. But certainly looking at the monitor, I would not be surprised if it was 4K. It was definitely 60 FPS, and I would not be surprised if it was 4K. And man, I gotta tell you, it just looks so good. Like, it really does. Yeah, very good. It honestly looks so good that I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to replay Tears of the Kingdom now. I mean, it kind of felt like this is how it should have been at launch, because obviously it should have been. Tears of the Kingdom launched at the tail end of the Switch 2's life cycle. The hardware was absolutely groaning under the weight of this game, and you could see it, especially when you were using the God Hand build feature. That is completely gone now. It looks and runs brilliantly. And it's kind of weird to say it, but Tears of the Kingdom is low-key one of the best launch titles for the Switch 2, because for the first time ever, you can play this game as it was intended to be played. And yes, I know emulation is a thing, but you know what I mean. Okay, so that's that. Time for our next question. Ayuman Rana asks, do the cartridges taste any better? Yeah. A little more on the Switch 2's hardware and performance now. The dock has been redesigned. It's now slightly bigger and it has a fan to help keep things cool while the unit is pushing out all those pixels and frames. You know what else is pushing out? Ray tracing. Yes, the Switch 2 is ray tracing capable, and you may be asking, how on earth can a handheld handle ray tracing? Well, it's helped in no small part by the fact that it also supports NVIDIA DLSS, which provides a huge amount of performance headroom and is basically the technology that underwrites most modern day PC game performance, better or worse. NVIDIA claims that the Switch 2 is 10 times more powerful than the original Switch, and while we can't take that claim to the bank, it's undeniable that DLSS alone makes this a significantly more performant device than the Switch 1. Doesn't stop there though, the Switch 2 also has 256 gigabytes of internal storage, and that sounds small in the modern era, but you have to remember that Nintendo games are much smaller in terms of their install size, so 256 gigabytes is pretty damn good, plus it also supports micro SD Express cards for more storage running at a faster transfer rate. It also has Wi-Fi 6, which is a big upgrade over the older protocols, plus it has more battery capacity, but don't think that means more battery life, because it's a modest increase in battery capacity, but a substantial increase in device performance, and that's naturally going to lead to, shorter battery life. That's just undeniable. Nintendo even went as far as to include support for 3D audio, and that's not something that anyone would have expected, but it's a nice inclusion. Stepping back and looking at all these questions about hardware and performance, Saxum13 asks, can it run Crysis? Dude, the Switch 1 can run Crysis. It's been doing it for 3 years, okay? But I take your point. You're really asking, is the performance of this device what we'd expect or what we'd hope for? So I've got 2 examples that I can give you on that front. I played Cyberpunk on the Switch 2. It was in docked mode only, and the demo allowed me to explore the Dogtown Marketplace, which is arguably the most graphically dense section of one of the most graphically dense games ever made. Now, I am not here to tell you that this looks anything like it looks on a high-end PC. A big PC rig can push out 4K, 200 FPS with the assistance of frame gen, full ray tracing, the works. This is running at 1080p both docked and handheld, but it does drop to 720p when you enable performance mode during handheld. There is dynamic resolution scaling kicking in as it aims to hold a 30 FPS frame rate. It felt relatively smooth, but the image quality was shaky. Either way, it was absolutely Cyberpunk running on a Switch. And yes, the Steam Deck and the ROG Ally can do that too. But estimates are that there's only about 3 million Steam Decks out there, and there's probably only like, I don't know, a couple of 100,000 ROG Allies, okay? That's compared to like 150 million Nintendo Switch consoles. The Nintendo audience is huge, and for the first time, a lot of those people are gonna get the chance to experience Cyberpunk, and it runs pretty damn well on this hardware. Not too shabby, given that Cyberpunk is literally one of the most graphically demanding and best looking video games ever made. On the flip side to this, we have a very pertinent question from Bleeg Platypus, who asks, there seemed to be stuttering on Donkey Kong in the treehouse footage. Did you encounter that? So I actually did get to play a good chunk of Donkey Kong Bananza. To be clear, what I played was an in-development build, and performance will no doubt improve in the lead up to the July launch. Having said that, frame rates while I was playing it were pretty shaky, far more shaky than I would have expected given the visual style for this game is rather simple. This performance is no doubt attributable to the voxel-like level design, where basically everything you see is destructible, and that obviously puts a lot of load on the CPU, which was definitely struggling to keep up at various points during the demo, particularly when I opened the map, where it chugged down to like 20 FPS or whatever. So already at launch, we're seeing the possibilities and the limitations of the Switch 2. Being able to play games like Tears of the Kingdom at smooth frame rates and high resolutions feels incredible. Cyberpunk fully playable on a Nintendo handheld targeting 1080p resolutions, that's impressive. But then stuff like Donkey Kong reminds us that, all hardware has its limits, and we'd be wrong to assume that developers won't hit those limits until later in the Switch 2's life cycle. By the way, Donkey Kong Bananza, super fun. Absolutely loved it. And I don't think these performance issues are going to stop you from enjoying this game. Honestly, it was the funnest game I played during the whole show. It's kind of like Red Faction in the sense that like everything you see is destructible to a point where you can kind of like punch through the ground and you'll be able to punch through a whole bunch of it, but eventually you'll hit like this bedrock that you can't destroy. You can like pull chunks out of the ground and then like hop on them and use them as a surfboard and then pick up that same piece and fling it at an enemy and like dig holes in places to find secrets and whatever. Like it's really cool and really inventive. And I think it works super well for Nintendo. For them to go into this like destructible environment space, that's going to open up some interesting possibilities with like the way Nintendo makes video games. In particular, I think this kind of tech would be super good for the next Zelda game. Because if you combine like voxel plus, Tears of the Kingdom / Breath of the Wild, that's sick. So yeah, Donkey Kong Bonanza rules. It doesn't have the kind of launch game halo that a Mario game or a Zelda game does, but I definitely predict that many people are going to be very pleasantly surprised by this. Time for another question. One sad little boy asks, how tall are you, Ralph? And what is your biggest dream? 6'2"? Rachel McAdams. One big thing we haven't talked about yet are the JoyCons. If you haven't been keeping tabs, the JoyCons for the Switch 2 do promise a number of big improvements, and having tested them myself, I can tell you that they absolutely deliver. Make no mistake though, they are very similar to the previous versions. Layouts are identical, for example, but the sticks are larger and have been redesigned from the ground up specifically to avoid the stick drift issue that plagued the original Switch JoyCons. We had hoped that this would mean the Switch 2 would have Hall Effect joysticks, which is tech that delivers the best longevity for joysticks. Sadly though, Nintendo confirmed just yesterday that this is not the case. They are not Hall Effect sticks. Stupid Flanders asks, how do the sticks feel compared to the original? Are the new Joy-Cons more ergonomic / nice feeling like the marketing wants to suggest? Well, the sticks are bigger, and as someone with larger hands, I can tell you that, yeah, I definitely felt the fact that they are bigger on the top. Outside of that, I didn't feel too much of a difference in terms of like their responsiveness or what have you. Yeah, it was really just about that top part feeling bigger, having more surface area. I definitely still prefer the Steam Deck sticks, which I think are fantastic. But yeah, I mean, these are a subtle, nice upgrade. Master Chief 2026 asks, how different is the HD Rumble 2? Good question, Master Chief, and thank you for your service. Joy-Cons do have enhanced rumble, though again, having tested that functionality, it does feel like a very minor enhancement, though I do need to test it a lot more to compare the difference between old and new. The way the Joy-Cons connect to the Switch 2 is very different though, and honestly I was a little bit blown away by this. You obviously had to slide the previous Joy-Cons into the Switch, resulting in a very satisfying click at the end. Here with the Switch 2, they connect by magnets, and that leads us to a question from Azriel96, who asks, how confident does the magnetic connection to the Joy-Cons feel? Bro, I could not believe how strong these magnets were. Like, you put them on, and you're like, okay, cool. And then you try to like tug them a little bit gently just to see, how they don't move. And then you like start pulling a little bit harder and you're like, okay, come on. And they still don't move. By the end, I was like, I wasn't using my full strength, but I was using a fair amount of strength to try and pull these things off, and they weren't budging, man. So that connection is super strong. They are not coming off accidentally. And the button at the back that releases them has actually been redesigned. It's now bigger and more pronounced, so you're not going to be accidentally pressing it either. Yeah, man, those magnets are doing their job for sure. A question from Ben sets up the next block nicely. Specifically keen to hear your thoughts on the mouse controls and what it might mean for the future of mouse and keyboard gaming on console. Thank you, Ben. Great question. By far and away, the most innovative thing about the Switch 2, in my view, is the inclusion of these mouse controls. Both of them have this functionality, and all it requires is that you press them edge side down on a surface, like any surface, and you can then use them as a mouse. And when I say any surface, you can literally use this mouse functionality by putting the Joy-Con on your leg and then using your thigh as a mouse pad, and that will work almost perfectly. So when this functionality was revealed, I thought, okay, cool. That opens up the pathway to an entirely new category of game appearing on the Switch for the first time. PC games that are entirely reliant on mouse inputs can now be ported to the Switch 2 without any issues. Obviously, we could play controller-driven versions of Civilization in the past, but Civ 7 will now be playable on the Switch 2 using the Joy-Con mouse functionality, and that's just a straight upgrade. It's even better than you realize though because of how seamlessly this is integrated, and I discovered this for myself when I went hands-on with Metroid Prime 4. I did play it, and yes, it is awesome. I don't have too much to say about it since the demo was very early on and it didn't give too much away, but it looked fantastic running at 4K 60 on a TV. You can play this without the mouse controls if you choose to, but if you do want to use them, then the mouse obviously lets you free look. What's really cool though is that at any point you can pick up the Joy-Con and seamlessly revert to the stick aim without needing to go into the menu or anything. And then when you want to go back to mouse look, all you need to do is just like put it back down and it seamlessly goes back to that. It's super easy to use. A really fantastic implementation that I suspect is going to see a lot of use in games where you're moving between menus and free look, and maybe you like to control the mouse when you're exploring, but maybe you like the auto aim support that kicks in when you're using the sticks. Really like this feature, and not for nothing, but the mouse is actually super precise as well. There was a mini game in that like paid tech demo thing that Nintendo's putting out, ridiculous. Anyway, you have to like use the mouse, the Joy-Con mouse, to like dodge these mines that are dropping down. And as you're doing this, you can definitely feel that this thing is super responsive, like no doubt about it. It's surprisingly good. But do recall that the Joy-Cons also have gyro functionality, which means that they can be used as motion controllers. So you can have up to 3 ways to control your games: traditional sticks, mouse controls, and also gyro aim. And that's exactly what CD Projekt Red are doing with Cyberpunk.
Yeah, so we are gonna have motion controls, which is something that we're extremely proud of because, you know, motion controls put the kind of fun in FPS, in my opinion. Kind of makes you feel back to the old times of the Wii, playing FPSs. They're really fun. We're not showing them here, but I have play tested them in the office, and I know the guys personally working on it. They're super hyped about this opportunity. We're also going to be supporting mouse controls on the Switch too. We're going to have gamepad controls, obviously. We're going to have handheld mode. So we're supporting everything that the Switch 2 offers in terms of controls. Everybody will find a way to play.
So that's pretty awesome, right? Like, Cyberpunk on Switch 2 will be the only way to play that game with motion controls. It will be the only console port of the game that supports mouse controls right out of the box without having to use like a third-party peripheral or whatever. And of course, it also has the traditional stick aim if that's how you'd like to play it. Personally, I think that's super impressive, and I think it represents like genuine innovation in the console space. There was one last thing to talk about when it comes to the Joy-Cons, and it's the inclusion of this bad boy, the C button. We were all wondering what this might be, and it turns out it kind of sucks. It's just a voice chat button, one that allows you to connect to Nintendo's new voice chat lobby system thing that lets you do on your Nintendo console what you've been able to do on other consoles for 20 years, and what you've been able to do on PCs since like the 1850s. Best of all, the button only does anything if you pay for Nintendo Online, since online infrastructure is something that you need to pay for when you play games on a console. PC Master Race laughing heartily off in the distance. Along with all this comes a new camera peripheral that Nintendo will sell that allows you to show off just how messy your house is, plus the ability to stream your own gameplay at what looks to be 144p 6 frames a second. It's basically if you were streaming like low-res GIFs to your friends. That's what Nintendo allows you to do. All this stuff, I think it's neither here nor there, to be honest with you. It's great for kids since they'll be able to use it seamlessly. I'm sure some adults will use it too, but they'll also have other options like using Discord on their phone or whatever. It's nice that Nintendo are making some inroads into this space, but it's hardly going to be a reason someone picks up a Switch 2. So that's basically everything we know about the Switch 2 hardware at this point, and you know, my hands-on impressions with it. Let's round out this block by ticking off a few helpful questions. Algor450 asks, how's the feeling of holding the console? Does it feel different than holding a regular Switch, or does it feel more premium? Well, it definitely feels better than holding an original Switch. It definitely feels more premium. There is a remarkable amount of tech packed into this device, and Nintendo did not skimp on the build quality that houses all that tech. This thing feels really nice to hold, and you're definitely going to get a kick out of it the first time you pick it up. I will say though that the ergonomics are the same as the Switch 1, which is to say that I don't like them personally. You know, as again, someone with bigger hands, I just don't like holding my Switch for prolonged periods of time. It just doesn't feel comfortable. You know, it's an improvement here because the device is bigger. The sticks at the top, they're bigger. That's about it otherwise, you know, so I can't really see myself playing in handheld mode a lot. I would, you know, if I'm going to play my Switch, I'm going to, you know, use the dock or whatever. I also ended up buying those like Hori Switch adapters for the Switch 1, which basically like a big chunky things that go on the side that give me more to grip onto. I found they were really good. You know, if I was to play lots of my Switch 2, I would probably end up doing the same thing. But like I said, I think I'm just going to play it docked with the new Pro controller which is actually nice, by the way. I haven't mentioned that to this point. But yeah, that one feels really good. It has a different texture to it. It has some like back buttons now. It's a subtle improvement over the original. That also just feels like more premium. Chunky Chonkers, great name by the way. They ask, do you think some people should treat the Switch 2 as a Switch Pro, especially due to the paid upgrades for Switch 2, i.e. Zelda game, free if you have an expansion pass, or Metroid Prime 4? I get what you're saying, but I don't think that's a fair way to characterize the Switch 2. This thing is bigger with a substantially better LCD screen. It is significantly more powerful, and it has support for things like DLSS, G-Sync, and ray tracing, all of which can substantially improve performance, smoothness, and fidelity when properly utilized by developers. It has mouse functionality, which opens up the door to all new experiences that weren't possible on the previous Switch. It has more storage, better Wi-Fi, 3D audio, the list goes on. This is absolutely a next-gen piece of kit. And I think that the 2 in the name is absolutely deserved. So no, I wouldn't characterize this as a Switch Pro. I think this is definitely a next gen offering. Now time for the $449 question. Super Toast asks, I know there's a lot of debate about the console price, but to me, it seems like a lot more of an upgrade than I expected from the Switch 1. In actually playing it, did you feel like the spec upgrade warrants the price? Because I honestly was not expecting 4K or 120 FPS to be a thing a Nintendo console was going to achieve. So price is a really sensitive topic when we're talking about the Switch 2, because there's the price of the unit, that's one thing, but then obviously Nintendo have also broken the seal on the $80 game. And we'll talk more about that in a second, but for now, I just want to focus on the price of the console. Now, everyone has a different sense of, the value of a dollar, but to me personally, I think that $450 for this unit, with all the things it can do and all the technology it brings, I think $450 is an extremely reasonable price point. I would love it to be cheaper, sure, but 120 Hertz, HDR, variable refresh rate screen, 4K 60 docked, 256 gigabytes of storage, Wi-Fi 6, a bigger screen, improved rumble, mouse functionality on the JoyCons, DLSS, ray tracing, G-Sync, all of that for 450 bucks. And I mean, I get it, like everything's expensive right now and it's only gonna get worse probably with all the shit that's going on in the world. But like just zooming out from all of that, $450 for this piece of kit, that's gonna last you for like 6 or 7 years. I think that's a pretty fair price point. Now, separate to that is the question of whether or not you pick up a Switch 2 or a handheld PC like a Steam Deck, for example. Allegor450 asks it here. Got a cold shower after seeing its pricing, and it's probably a must-have if you want to play Nintendo games, but I feel I should get a Steam Deck for the same price point. What do you think? So that's a very relevant question for people who watch this channel, and by that I mean like people like myself who, massive nerds, they live from game to game, probably own multiple platforms. The idea of PC gaming isn't particularly scary to you and you're open to that. You probably would spend a few $100s just to play the Nintendo exclusives, or you might spend a few $100s to be able to take your Steam library on the go with you, or you might do both while also buying, a PS Portal so that you can keep playing your games when you get kicked off the TV because your kids want to watch Gabby's Dollhouse or whatever. All of this is to say that the choice between a Switch 2 and a Steam Deck is a very false economy of choice that the overwhelming majority of consumers will never consider. As I said, 3 million Steam Decks sold, 150 million Nintendo Switches. The target market for a Switch 2 is very different to the target market for a Steam Deck, and that's just a reality. And so in answer to your question, Algor450, if someone comes to me and says, which one should I buy? I'd realistically have like 50 follow-up questions to try and understand, like, who are you? Like, what games do you play? What libraries do you have? Like, do you have a family and what are they into? Like, there's so many things that you'd have to really understand to be able to answer that question properly, because it would really depend. For me personally, I love my Steam Deck. It's my handheld of choice and it will remain that way no matter how good the Switch 2 is, to be perfectly honest with you, because my library's there and I'm very happy over there, and that's that. The Switch 2 is going to be exclusively for Nintendo exclusives, and I am personally very happy with that. For a lot of other people, the Switch 2 is going to be their main driver, and I can tell you right now, having gone hands-on with it myself, those people are going to be very well serviced by this device, and they're going to feel very happy about it. So in answer to your question, for people who watch this channel and people like myself, the Steam Deck's probably going to be a very compelling offering, but for, regular people who, like go outside and stuff, they're probably going to be very happy with the Switch 2. One thing that that I don't think people are talking enough about is the level of day one third-party support that the Switch 2 is going to have. This is a big deal when you contrast it to the launch of the original Switch. Don't forget, back then, Nintendo had basically lost all third-party support after how badly the Wii U bombed, so they had to rebuild those third-party partnerships after the install base of the Switch became so big the publishers just couldn't ignore it. Here, things really couldn't be any different, as every single publisher is like tripping over themselves to get as much onto the Switch 2 as they possibly can, as quickly as they can. That's how you get Cyberpunk and Elden Ring and Split Fiction and Yakuza 0 Director's Cut and Civilization and Street Fighter and Hogwarts Legacy and Hitman, and the list goes on and on and on and on. We're looking at a period during this console's launch window where the very best games from the past generation that couldn't run on the original Switch will make their way to the Switch 2, and that in itself is an extremely compelling value proposition for a bunch of people. But then there's new release third-party games too. Borderlands 4 is headed to the Switch 2, Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3 and 4 Remake, the James Bond game from IO Interactive. Basically every indie you can imagine will be looking to release on the Switch 2. Speaking of which, Hollow Knight Silk Song will be available on Switch 2. Talk about a system seller. And speaking of system sellers, did you know that FromSoft are releasing a Switch 2 exclusive? It's called Dusk Bloods, and it's like We Have Bloodborne at Home, only it's actually a co-op PvEVP experience directed by From's main man, Hidetaki Miyazaki. That is pretty damn crazy, and I think we kind of need to watch this a lot, because that is not a game for kids, okay? And it's like their flagship third-party exclusive that Nintendo secured, and it's a FromSoft game. So to me, it feels like they're obviously rolling out a bit of a different strategy with the Switch 2, because yeah, that is not the kind of game that you would imagine Nintendo goes, yes, we must have that just for us. Like that, as I said, let's watch this space. Then of course, there's the first party offerings. We've already spoken about the upgrades for Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild, as well as Metroid Prime 4. Kirby and the Forgotten Land is also getting a Switch 2 upgrade, as will the upcoming Pokemon ZA. Don't worry though, despite its Switch 2 glow up, it'll still look like a game releasing in 2006. We also spoke about Donkey Kong Bonanza. Like I said, it's great. The big one we haven't spoken about yet is Mario Kart World, and boy oh boy, is this one something special. Now to be clear, it is still Mario Kart. Sure, I'm not out here to tell you that this is like a massive reinvention of the formula. It's still Mario Kart. But I can tell you that they've added enough to the formula that it feels like this is a real step up for, you know, that style of game. 25 drivers in a race feels like a gimmick until you're sitting at the starting line and have 24 races crowding around you, piling into each other at the first turn. It's just utter madness in the best possible way, to the point where older Mario Kart games feel kind of quaint now. Then there's the track design, which is all about contiguous worlds. You don't do laps in Mario Kart World. You go from place to place in a big interconnected world that gives you full freedom to explore. That's best showcased in the Knockout Tour mode, which pitches 25 races against each other. And as you race, people are knocked out if they don't place high enough at various checkpoints. You'll start in the, I don't know, Green Meadows area before racing through the Ice World before ending up in Volcano Land or whatever it is. It's super fun and it's super tense to get close to those checkpoints, hoping that you can cross the line before getting shelled and having 6 races past you. Not for nothing, but I won my race of 25 people, just saying.
That's what I'm talking about! That's what I'm talking about! Great job!
So, Mario Kart World is excellent, but is it $80 US excellent? And this is where the wheels really start to come off the launch hype for the Switch 2. Because yes, Mario Kart World is going to be $80 US at release, making it the very first AAA $80 US game at launch. And look, a topic like this is like big enough to be its own dedicated video, and I expect we'll be talking about this for, you know, months and years to come. But for now, all I will say is this. This move seems very ill-timed. The $60 price tag for games has held for decades before finally rising to $70 5 years ago when Sony announced that they'd be doing that. It feels like only yesterday that the cost of the brick went up, and now it's going up again. The value of $1 is different to everyone, and to be honest, the value of a game is different to everyone. Like, let's not forget that Redfall was the same price as Tears of the Kingdom and Baldur's Gate 3, do you know what I mean? But what is near universal at the moment is that purchasing power is not keeping pace with inflation, shit is getting more expensive, and due to the trade war, a global recession is highly likely. I'm seeing a lot of threads from people being like, I love Nintendo, I want to buy this, but the reality is that I just can't buy it right now. I'm seeing plenty of people say that if this industry moves to an $80 price point as standard, then they'll just not buy new release games anymore. And that strategy works most of the time, but in the case of Nintendo games, it kind of doesn't, since Nintendo doesn't discount their flagship stuff the same way that other publishers do. Given that Donkey Kong Bonanza is still a $70 new release, I suspect that this pricing for Mario Kart World is actually more about incentivizing people to buy the bundle rather than like a concerted effort to move the industry to an $80 price tag as standard. And with how much economic turmoil is afoot at the moment, I would be surprised if this industry took this as their cue to make all future releases $80. I'm sure that the $80 or more price tag is going to hit with GTA 6, but I don't know that the rest of the industry wants to take that risk just yet. But hey, obviously I could be totally wrong. Now that's not to say that there isn't some straight up bullshit going on with the launch of the Switch 2. Far from it, in fact. Charging $10 US for this tech demo thing is like genuinely embarrassing. Like I played this thing, it's fun, it's cool, whatever, but it's essentially a commercial, like an ad for a product that you have already bought, the Switch 2, right? How Nintendo thought they could get away with it makes no sense to me. Is it greed? Is it incompetence? Is it like pig-headedness? Is it like some kind of, I don't know, they were trying to take a stand? I have no idea. Like I literally have no idea how they thought this was a good idea. But yeah, absolute madness. I also look at this new move from Nintendo where some games aren't going to be actually installed on the cartridge that you purchased. They're going to do the whole game key thing. A bunch of third-party games are doing that, and it sucks from a preservation perspective. Things like paying for voice chat, that blows too. So there are definitely reasons to be frustrated with the moves that Nintendo are making with this console, but overall, the truth is I'm pretty impressed by it, and I think that it definitely sets up a strong foundation for the coming generation. The hardware is inarguably very good. Honestly, I think it's better than any of us could have hoped for. There's some real innovation both under the hood and in terms of how we interact with this thing, and that's going to massively expand the sort of games we can play and potentially the way that some future games are designed. The expansive library of third-party offerings will mean there'll be no shortage of stuff to play on the Switch 2, and the promise of Nintendo's first-party releases is frankly as compelling as ever. Mario Kart, Metroid Prime 4, Donkey Kong Bonanza, and man, I didn't even mention Kirby Air Rides yet. Like that's, being directed by Masahiro Sakurai. He's coming back to do this. That in itself is very impressive. The price for this thing is going to hit different for different people. I think the console is well priced, and I think the $80 price tag for games is very steep, and it is going to cause some people to pull back on their purchase decision, while others will happily wear it, because to them, $80 is a fair price for a high-quality Nintendo release free from all the bugginess and monetization that plagues so many other AAA games these days. For me personally, I'm not really looking forward to the Switch 2 as much as I'm looking forward to the games that I will be able to play on it. I am a PC main, like my desktop and my Steam Deck, and that's not going to change anytime soon. I use my PS5 whenever Sony releases an exclusive, otherwise I don't touch that. With my original Switch, it was the same deal. I used it to play Nintendo exclusives, and that's going to be exactly the same here. I really admire Nintendo's output. They invest in their franchises and deliver a quality bar that few publishers can match. I don't see Nintendo changing tack on that strategy anytime soon, so I personally am very keen to see what Nintendo has in store for us over the months and years to come. But anyway, that is the video. That's all I got for you. If you have any questions, leave them below in the comment section and I'll try to answer anything. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching. Please like the video if you liked it, dislike it if you didn't, and be sure to stick around for this video's sponsor. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. It's never too late to make a switch. Look at me. A few years ago, I was chained to a desk doing corporate stuff. No disrespect to anyone who loves that, but it certainly wasn't making me happy. I've told this story before, but when I wanted to break into the games media business, no one would hire me, so I decided to make my own website that focused on game guides. The thing was, I had no idea how to build a website, so I had to spend a few $1,000s paying someone to build it for me, and the website was terrible, mind you. It wasn't the web designer's fault, it was entirely on me. My idea sucked. The point of my story is that back then you had to pay someone thousands of dollars to build a website for your business idea because that was pretty much the only way that a website could get made. Not so today, because thankfully we have Squarespace. Squarespace is the place to build almost any website you'll need. Want to sell handmade candles? You can build a website for that. Want to profile your art portfolio? You can build a website for that. Want to start writing gaming reviews and commentary to try to shoulder barge your way into the industry? You can build a website for that too. Squarespace's intuitive tools allow you to build professional looking websites in minutes, and their rich suite of e-commerce options allows you to promote and monetize your work so that you can begin making a living from it. In fact, Squarespace recently took things to a whole new level. Their all-new design intelligence framework leverages their 2 decades of experience in website creation to give you even more tools to shape the website of your dreams, helping you with things like copywriting, tone of voice, product descriptions, and even mailouts. So if you're looking for a sea change, then you're in luck, because not only is Squarespace free to get started with, but if you use offer code SKILLUP, you'll get 10% off your purchase of a domain name. Click the link below to get started. Thanks Squarespace for sponsoring the video, and thank you for watching it.